And welcome everyone. We are live and hello book lovers. Welcome to Authors Love Bookstores presented by A Mighty Blaze. I am your host, Joe Moldover, author of the novel Every Moment After, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. Authors Love Bookstores is a weekly online program held on Wednesdays. I host and produce in conjunction with fellow writer Kimberly Hensel Lawrence. Our goal is to highlight indie bookstores across the US and Canada, to tell you what makes them so special, and to talk about what you can all do to support their continued survival. If you're with us live, please feel free to put a comment in the feed and we'll get to as many as we can. Today, I am delighted to be with author Jenna Evans Welch. Jenna, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Jenna is the author, for those of you who don't know, of the New York Times best-selling Love and series, Love and Gelato, Love and Luck, Love and Olives, if I have that right.
Yep, you got him. The love
And
ends.
I got the Love Ands. And Jenna is joining us to talk about one of her favorite independent bookstores, The King's English, located in Salt Lake City. And also with us from The King's English is bookseller Rob Ekman. Rob, welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having us.
It's great to see you. Let's dive right in. Jenna, we are here together because you selected the King's English as one of your favorite independent bookstores. And I am sure that you visited many indies over the years. So can you tell us what makes you love the King's English so much? What is special about this store?
Well, there was no question which bookstore I would choose. I was sitting here with my notebook trying to list all the reasons why I love the King's English. And the thing that really comes up for me, and this will probably sound silly, is it just feels like my home bookstore, right? I am the kind of shopper and reader who's not going to go into a bookstore and talk to the booksellers much. But I love going into a store where I can tell that a lot of care has been placed, where I can walk around, look at little signs, see things that have been put out thoughtfully, where I can get recommendations. And the King's English just has everything that we love about independent bookstores. It's the most charming building, wonderful people. And I have been so lucky. Every one of my books, they have helped me to launch. And so at this point, they just feel like they're part of my career. And I have had really, really wonderful experiences with them.
That's great. I love that. Um, Rob, I would love for our viewers to hear a little bit more about the King's English from the inside. So I have a couple of questions for you. One thing that I always love to ask booksellers about is live events, because live events at indies are some of my favorite things. And they can be extremely memorable in lots of different ways. And we were actually chatting a little bit before we came on about it, but I wonder if you would share with us one or maybe two really memorable live events of the King's English.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Before I do, Jenna, thank you for bringing us, the King's English, on to recommend us here. This is a great honor
Of
for
course, you
us.
guys really are wonderful.
And this little bookshop is special. It's been in Sugar House, which is a suburb of Salt Lake City, for almost 44 years. We've always been women owned. We are just a little place. We're only 2,000 square feet. 8 rooms that are stretched through 3 old buildings, including an old gas station. That's our children's room now. In the days of in-person events, we would hold up to 500 events a year. That has sure changed since the time of COVID, but some of the memories of live events. One of my favorite events was David Sedaris, who came last summer and was just a hoot, probably the most naughty author that I have ever had the privilege of working a really long night with, and absolutely hysterical. Stephen King was a highlight. And then there was this little one that we did in the front yard of a house out in Sandy where we served snow cones. Jenna, was that right?
I think it was gelato and cotton candy.
Cotton candy, that's what it was.
Yes.
That's right. But live events really are a kick, and the energy. There is nothing quite like the alchemy that happens when an author meets a fan, or I guess it should be the other way around, because the reader comes to meet the author, and they come and Jenna can speak to this, I'm sure, but they come with their hearts full of gratitude, appreciation, questions, and in all the years that I've done this, I've never gotten tired of watching that.
That is such a great point. And I will just say parenthetically, I caught David Sedaris when he came through Massachusetts, I think probably on that same tour. And what an amazing live event. If anybody
Yeah.
has a chance to see him live, he's amazing. Um, Jenna, what Rob says is actually interesting about meeting fans. And you are you're a young adult author. But of course, young adult books are frequently read by adults
Right.
of all ages. Talk to me a little bit about meeting your audience and meeting sort of like, adolescent versus adult fans. What's the difference? Is there a special kick in meeting a young fan? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I love how Rob described that moment where there's that energy between the reader and the writer. Um, Writing is, and you know this, is so solitary. You're just in your mind, you're alone. And sometimes I think it's easy to forget that there will be people who will actually be consuming your work, right? Who will be having their own experience with something that you created. Um, Writing for young adults is hilarious because they look miserable when they come to meet you. Like, there is no one as miserable as a 12-year-old whose parent promises that they love your work more than anything, who is being taken to the front of their table. They just look at you like, I can't believe I have to talk to you. This is the worst thing in the world. So anyway, that always cracks me up, just how it just brings me right back to those angsty young years. I do get the most wonderful emails and letters from young readers, though, and that means a lot to me. I've known the age group that I wanted to write for since I was that age. The books that I wanted, I just didn't feel like were there for me. I remember feeling like the magical worlds of reading I'd grown up with, suddenly they all transformed into cheerleaders, and the only thing we had to care about anymore were boys and popularity, and that just didn't make sense to me. So it's been really, really magical to actually be doing this and also to see the faces of the people that I am writing for. And of course, I appreciate my adult readers so much. And now that I've been publishing for 5 years, I actually just spoke with someone this morning, a lot of people who they are saying, oh, you've been with me through, my whole high school career, or and I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, I've been with you through your teen years. And that really is such a privilege and an honor.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think it really is something that's kind of unique about writing for a YA audience. I love that. And I love your description of the 12-year-old coming up to the table and looking like there's anything. They'd rather be at the dentist than being at a
Oh, they look so miserable. Like, this is just the worst possible scenario.
It's so true. It's so true. Rob, one thing I love to ask booksellers about, independent booksellers about, is the art of hand selling. Of making recommendations to customers, of matching up a reader with a book. First, let me just begin by asking you, what is the art of making a really good book recommendation in your mind?
I think that we have to start with the customer and find out for whom we're shopping. And then I think that it's open call to offer up a number of things. I think it's important to be nimble and to be able to move from title to title. But our tagline here at the King's English is matching books to readers since 1977, and we feel very confident that that's what we do. So the magic, I think, is just being particularly careful and tuning in. We know that, and the research shows that the thing that separates small businesses from large ones, is customer service. And the customer service that we can offer people one-on-one is something that the great big box chains and the online services can't offer. So when someone comes in and they want help, I think that the one-on-one conversation goes a long way, and then just be ready to offer a number of suggestions till we get it right.
Yeah, I think it is all about that relationship. That's absolutely true. It's something you don't find in the big boxes or with an online store.
And if I can brag on them really quickly. So I
Yeah.
was in, I did a lot of pre-orders for my book that came out in November, and I was there signing stacks. I listened to a 25-minute conversation that a bookseller was having with someone who was trying to find a book. They were on the phone for 25 minutes trying to find them the right book. And it was so sweet to listen to. Like, it was such a great relationship. It was such a connection. And I'm sure that that customer has been coming to you for years and years, exactly for that reason.
That's great. Thank you for saying that. I think you're right. I think that we get the reputation and that word spreads. The most fun ones, of course, is when someone comes in and says they want a book recommendation. They had a favorite book. They can't remember what the title was, but they know that the spine was yellow, you know.
I've done that to my local indie, which is Wellesley Books. I'll go in and say, it's a book that was about a fire, and there was a fire on the cover, and help me find it. It came out about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Rob, I have another question for you, and then I'm going to take a similar question over to Jenna. A lot of the people who view this program and who love A Mighty Blaze are themselves writers or aspiring writers. And so, Rob, I would love to ask you about, how do authors engage with indie bookstores? And I'd like to specifically ask, are there mistakes that authors make in reaching out to you, engaging? And is there advice that you would give to a debut author, somebody who's out there with a book and wants to get out there and is trying to figure out how to do it?
Oh yes, we need a lot longer show. I think the first qualifier I would ask is this author, or the authors we're talking about, are they published already, or are they the dreamers? Are they the people still putting their ideas together? So we'll start there. I think that authors, new authors, up and coming authors, oftentimes really underestimate the amount of work that's going to wind up on their shoulders after the book comes out. I think there's a belief that that marketing and distribution and all of these different things just happen, and so I get a lot of questions about simply how to start. Right down to the solicited or unsolicited manuscripts, with publishers. So I think the first thing I would suggest is homework. Ask the questions. You don't know what you don't know, right? And I see it a lot. Then if we move to authors that are just published, I think the most challenging, I'm not going to say that they're challenged, but the most challenging authors are the ones who have self-published and then aren't aware of what bookstores are looking for. They don't have their books formatted in a way that is acceptable to us. They aren't prepared to do the marketing. They've been sold a line from whatever online publisher it is, and so sometimes they arrive at the door with a stack of books, hoping that they're ready to go, and I have to send them away and say, you've got a lot more work to do before we can put your book on our shelves, and that's regrettable to me, because I know that, well, this is the author's work. This is the next great American novel to them. And it's my job as a bookseller to help get it to the people. So I think that authors need to do their homework about what bookstores want, how the bookstores want it, and what programs the bookstores offer to help facilitate it.
It's great advice. I remember when my debut novel was coming out a few years ago, people said, well, now the real work begins. You wrote the book, but now the real work begins. And I thought that was just kind of a line. I thought that was sort of like a little bit of hyperbole, and it's not. I mean, it's actually, it's really, really true.
Yeah, and these days, publishers are spending a fraction of the money they spent even 15 years ago on tours.
Yeah.
The amount of attention they can give any one author is so much more constricted than it was not so long ago. So you're right. There is a lot of work that each author has to do.
Jenna, a question for you coming in from an online viewer. So this is a writing, sort of a craft question for you. That I'd love to hear more about writing for YA. How do you capture the voice? And do you have early readers, by which I think you mean sort of like beta readers, who are themselves teens, to give you feedback from that perspective?
Okay, great questions. I think my process is pretty different than a lot of other writers. I've learned. I kind of found my writing community after publishing, which is a little atypical. So first of all, I think voice and an intriguing story are the two most important things in YA. If they can't hear your character, they're not going to care. And if they're not interested enough to turn the page, they're not going to turn the page. I think those are just so crucial above anything else, especially in YA. So finding the voice, I don't know that I can exactly describe how to get to it. But I do know that I did it wrong for a long time. It took me years and years of sort of fumbling through voices before I found one that felt natural to me, that felt like it had life to it. And that honestly just took me a lot of writing, just took a lot of work until I could hear a character. And as I'm working on drafts, I find that my main character's voice tends to come last, which I'm sure just makes my editor crazy, but that tends to happen. So, voice, I think reading things that, not to imitate, but reading things that you think, oh, they're doing it right, and trying to figure out how they did it right can be extremely helpful. That's something I've done a lot, pulling up books that I think, really have succeeded at the thing that I want to do. I think that's one of the very, very best ways to learn how to write, is really to read a lot. And then as far as beta readers, no, I don't do that. It's been interesting this year, especially. I've had a lot of questions about that. And I've heard from a lot of new writers who have large critique circles. And I look back on that and I can see the value in having maybe a few critique partners. But I think it would have been extremely confusing to me, especially as a new writer, to have had a lot of voices telling me what they thought about my writing. Because even today, with books that by many standards have been successful, I get all sorts of, responses to my work. There are people who love it. There are people who hate it. And if I'd gotten that early on, that would have been extremely confusing. So I think, finding your voice, finding something that works for you, and then maybe finding a few voices that you really trust and that you think can be helpful to you. I think that's really all you need.
I think that's a great response. And it seems like one of the really important things you're saying is that you really have to think about when to subject yourself to critique. And that if you subject yourself to too much critique too soon from people who aren't carefully chosen, it can be counterproductive.
I just don't think everyone's is helpful, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's criticism or feedback, not everyone knows what they're talking about. Unfortunately, It'd be nice if they did. But yeah, I mean, that's a tricky thing because, I don't know that anyone can tell you how to find the right person or the right partner. But, people find them. So there's hope in that.
Yeah. And when you find somebody, you got to hold on to them.
Right.
Thank you for that response. I want to talk a little bit about writing and book selling during COVID. Authors Love Bookstores is a program that emerged in the COVID crisis to support independent booksellers and writers. So, Rob, I'm just going to come to you first. And I believe the King's English is currently closed for foot traffic. Tell us a little about what's going on with your store, how you are surviving this situation, and what the audience can do to support you.
Thanks, Joe. We closed on March 15th of last year, that Monday. We closed to browsing. We found the booksellers who were willing to work together in this more confined space, furloughed dozens of part-timers. And so now we work with a very small core staff. We stay physically separated in the shop. As far as the books go, our online book sales at www.kingsenglish.com just took off. And especially in the early months of the pandemic, when we were all fairly certain it would be of a shorter duration, people were so generous and are still so generous. It's astonishing and just beautiful. And my gratitude is just so deep for people's love of this store. We had last summer, we had some kids set up a lemonade stand on the corner to benefit the King's English. And when they were done, they brought us their quarters and dollar bills. We've been doing curbside pickup in the parking lot of the store. We have a great little location. All summer long, it was under a tent that we put up every day. When the weather turned, we knew we had to make some substantial change. So we invested in a 20-foot shipping container that is outfitted with bookcases, and we open it to customers to help themselves to their orders. So we've been working through all of the bugs and fun that has come from that. So we are still plugging. We want to open to our customers so bad. We would love to do story times. We'd love to do, in-person events. But we know that even once we do open, when we open again, that events are still a ways off. We do online story times Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock on Facebook Live and Instagram. So I think that what people can do is keep shopping local. The rude fact of the online and shipping truth, as it turns out, is that because we are not Amazon, we can't even meet what people's expectations are. People are used to Amazon Prime and that immediate gratification. And it's just not that way with little bookstores. We're booksellers. We're not inventory control specialists and things like that. But we've become a lot better. So people can be patient. People can continue to love us, but just know that it's going to take a little bit longer to get the books.
That's right. That's a great response. What do you think what are you finding people really want and need to read at a time like this? I mean, I feel like last March, people started reading The Plague and sort of Station 11
right.
and sort of
That's
stuff
right.
like that.
That's right. Yeah.
Did it, but as time is going on, what do you find people are looking for? What do you find people are turning to books for at a time like this?
Craft books, knitting books, model railroading books, drawing books, journals, blank books. Philosophy has become huge. Meditation, yoga, these kind of books. As far as fiction goes and others, we've always had those have always been strong categories. So I don't know how I can pick those apart, but there's definitely been trends. Cooking, baking. You remember last year when we saw those trends come across the news that people were baking more, and sure enough, it was reflected in our cookbook sales and our bread cookbook sales. Sourdough bread. That's right. So it's been interesting. We are still selling a lot of Camus' The Plague. It's still hot. Nonfiction. Yeah, people are still just reading all sorts of things, and puzzles. Let's not forget when they get tired of reading, they want to do a puzzle. So we've been selling a lot of those.
That's great. Jenna, one thing that the audience always wants to know about from writers is, are you able to be productive during all of this? And if so, how? What have you found you need to do to kind of shelter your creative process from all of the different kinds of craziness going on in the world around us?
Oh, man. Well, I've been dealing with a lot of burnout, like I think a lot of us have, but I have been producing a lot of work because I've had to. I've been under contract, and I think that really has been a gift for me. I remember in the early days, last March, I was like in a parking lot, hiding out from my kids, writing, trying to get things done. I've always been a coffee shop writer. That's the way I have young kids, and that's how I've always separated my home life from my writing life. And then those closed, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to learn how to write from home. And that was rocky for me. It was really rocky. Found my way into it. And then I started to tell people, I love to work from home. I'm really starting to like it. And then my coffee shop up the street opened with limited seating. And I ran, I was out the door the second that I heard they were open. So, I think it would have been really difficult for me to have found a lot of mental space to do this if it wasn't something that I had to do as far as, financial commitments. But I am really glad that I have needed to work and create during this time period, because it really has given me space in my mind to be elsewhere. I write books that are taking you on little vacations. And the thing that I love about that is that I mentally spend time in these other places, and that has been really helpful for me.
Yeah. And you said you're under contract. Someone in the audience wants to know if you can say what's coming next, or perhaps you're not saying it.
Yeah, I'm not saying a lot yet. I'm just actually finishing up a draft that I'm turning in just a few days, which is exciting. But it is another YA contemporary. my other books are set in Europe. This one is not, but the setting is still a very big deal, and it's a multi-generational story, and I am having so much fun with it. So anyway, hopefully I'll be able to talk more about it soon, but it's very different than my other work, and I'm having a lot of fun.
Very nice. That's awesome. Just a reminder to the audience, there are links in the chat for you to click to go to the King's English to pick up a few things online. Rob, I wonder if you have any recommendations for the audience in terms of kind of what seems hot right now, things that you've recently read that you've loved, or any gems that you've uncovered that you'd want to pass on to the audience. Jenna, you as well, feel free to jump in if there's anything that you want to make sure people know about.
Well, I've really struggled with reading since COVID. I love to read, but somehow the whole thing and stress of what's gone on here at the bookshop has kind of taken me off of my reading game. But I know that there are some great books out there. Commitment by Wen. There's a local author, Gerald Elias, who wrote a mystery called The Beethoven Sequence that's been really well received. Utah has an amazing number of authors, local authors with international appeal. So it's always fun to see what's coming in. But I'm sorry, I'm kind of drawing a blank. Jenna, what about you?
I know I'm glancing over. I'm in my spare bedroom, seeing what I have by the side of my bed. There's a towering pile. I also have been kind of bouncing around with books. I found that my attention span was also small, so I started rereading things that I enjoyed. I really love Bill Bryson. I love David Sedaris as well, but Bill Bryson, I reread The Thunderbolt Kid. I've probably read that for 2 months, just every night. It's so funny to me that it would separate me from the news or whatever was going on. So yeah, I guess I've been reading more essays. And then right now I'm reading a novel called Evie Drake Starts Over.
Yes, I just read that.
Oh, did you? I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
I don't read a lot of rom-com, and I thought it was fabulous. And I loved the voice. Speaking of voice, I mean, that book is just a pleasure to flip open to any page.
Yeah, really fun. And then I also have Eliza Starts a Rumor, which I think I've also been hearing a lot about. So anyway, that's what's next to my bed right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, for the people in the audience, those are popping up in your feed, and the place where you should be picking them up is kingsenglish.com. We are running low on time. Rob, one thing that we always come to the bookseller with at the end of the show is this question about what it takes to run a successful bookstore, because I find that a lot of writers, a lot of passionate readers love the idea of working in or running an independent bookstore, and I fantasize about it. But I think that a lot of people don't necessarily know exactly what goes into it. So the question we ask is, running a successful bookstore is part hard work, part luck, and part blank. Part what else?
Poverty.
Yeah, I mean, honest answer, man. Honest answer.
I'll never be rich, but God, I'm happy.
I love that.
It takes push. It takes drive. It takes someone that not only wants to read, but that knows how to crunch numbers, because it is a business. And if you want to survive, you have to be able to work at those different levels. So it's customer service on one hand and the analytics on the other, and then patience. If you want to become a community institution or something in your community, it's going to take time, but it's well worth it. If this little bookshop is an amazing little place and so much fun, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
I love that answer. I always love the answers to that question, and that is a great, great, great answer. It's such a pleasure to talk to the two of you about reading and writing. And to the online audience, I will say it one more time: head to kingsenglish.com, pick up some books, pick up the Love and books, head over to jennaevanswelch.com to keep up and find out about Jenna's upcoming work, which we're very excited to hear about. Thank you both for being here. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. We will be back next week, same time, same place, with a new bookstore. And until then, stay well, keep reading.